Studios in downtown Little Rock. This is Capitol View with your host, Jesse Tenor.
Good Sunday morning to you and welcome into Capitol View. I'm Jesse Tenor. More than 19 months have passed since Arkansans legalized medical marijuana. We'll take a look at what the Arkansas Supreme Court ruling means for cannabis here in the natural state. We begin with the biggest story of the week, the crisis at the border and Arkansas's potential role in what comes next. After facing mounting pressure from both parties and much of the American public, really, President Trump signed an executive order Wednesday aiming to stop separating immigrant families at the U.S.-Mexico border. But the U.S. government is still holding thousands of kids, and there's no word when or if they may be reunited with their parents. Congress has been working on legislation aimed at reforming U.S. immigration laws, but it appears those efforts will fall short. On Thursday, the House voted down the first of two bills that had been under consideration. It was backed only by conservatives, taking a hardline stance on DACA and border security, as well as calling for cuts to legal immigration. All four Arkansas congressmen voted for it, but it failed by a considerable margin. The House delayed voting on a second bill, which includes border wall funding and a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients, until sometime this coming week, so we'll keep you updated on that. In the meantime, we're waiting to see if the government will house some of them right here in Arkansas. This week, federal officials took a look at a pair of possible detainment sites in the state. The first, Little Rock Air Force Base in Jacksonville. Officials with the Department of Health and Human Services and the Department of Defense toured the site Thursday. It'll be up to the Department of Health and Human Services to determine if the base is used to house unaccompanied immigrant children, and we are expected to hear that decision rather soon. Little Rock Air Force Base isn't the only location in Arkansas being considered. Federal officials also took a close look at a vacant USDA facility in Kelso that's in DeShay County. Capitol View's Mitch McCoy was in Kelso talking to the state representative of that area who has some major concerns about the plan.
It's quiet now, but things may take a quick turn.
Property is at the lower end of a floodplain.
Andrew Wargo III has lived in Kelso nearly all his life. He says the old fishing experiment station federal agents were looking at Thursday are unfit for anyone to live in.
It'll go under a foot of water and stay that way for 24 hours.
People who live here tell me when it rains, it pours. They say this site becomes a big infestation for mosquitoes, snakes, even alligators.
They're not interested in the buildings. They're interested in building tents on the property.
State Representative Mark McElroy lives in Kelso. He says he does not support separating immigrant children from their parents at the border or housing them in DeShay County.
But I would invite our president to come down. Let's spend the night in the tent, and if he can stay all night, I will never complain again.
I don't think that's going to go over very well.
Wargo says he could support immigrants being brought to Kelso if the right infrastructure was in place.
You put people out there in tents, the mattresses are going to be floating out of the tents. They're going to be wading knee-deep.
The proposed site is about a half-mile away from where thousands of Japanese Americans were detained in the 1940s during World War II.
And we had 9,000 people that didn't look like us, so we locked them up.
Making people wonder if Kelso could make history again.
And as mentioned, DeShay County was the site of a Japanese internment camp during World War II. Among the many people brought there in the early 1940s was Star Trek actor George Takei. He said that it's vital to remember what happened there. He wrote on Twitter Thursday, "Just heard that they are considering a detainment center for immigrant children just 2 miles from where I spent my childhood, behind barbed wire in a camp in Roar, Arkansas. I have no words." Takei was, of course, one of thousands of Japanese Americans detained in southeast Arkansas during World War II. Coming up after a quick break, I'll talk to one of those detainees, a friend of Takei's even, who still lives in Arkansas, about his experience and how he says it relates to what's going on today. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
Family owned since 1979, Johnston's Home Center is Central Arkansas's best department store, and now we're bigger than ever before. Super savings this month with special offers on the entire line of GE appliances: stoves, microwaves, refrigerators, washers, and dryers. Low prices and top-notch customer service. That's Johnston's.
Little Rock Surgery Center is an efficient, affordable alternative for approximately 90% of all outpatient surgeries. We have the ability to save you up to 40%, and we deliver extremely high patient satisfaction. Call Little Rock Surgery Center today or visit llsurgery.com.
Do you suspect abuse or neglect of your loved one in a nursing home? Here are some things you should look for: bed sores, bruises, dehydration, significant weight loss. Any one of these could be evidence that something is wrong. If your loved one has been the victim of abuse or neglect, call the lawyers at Rainwater, Holt & Sexton, 1-800 434-4800. They'll help you weather the storm.
The XT5 reviews are in. Come in now and see the beauty of the XT5 for yourself. Get this low-mileage lease on this 2018 Cadillac XT5 for only $349 per month.
Hi folks, Mark Sherwood, Sherwood Tractor. Tired of being left hanging by your old worn-out equipment? Come into Sherwood Tractor and get the best deals on Mahindra tractors, the #1 selling tractor in the world. At Sherwood Tractor, we will get you the right tractor and implements at the best price to get your work done. Come in today and save.
Family owned since 1979, Johnston's Home Center is Central Arkansas's best department store, and now we're bigger than ever before. Super savings this month with special offers on the entire line of GE appliances. Stoves, microwaves, refrigerators, washers, and dryers. Low prices and top-notch customer service. That's Johnston's.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. As the country grapples with the immigrant family separation story, some are drawing historic parallels to what happened in this country more than 70 years ago. Joining me in studio this morning is a man who lived through Japanese internment right here in the natural state, Richard Yada. Richard, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for letting me be here with you.
Of course, we really appreciate it. So when you start to tell your life story, it starts at the internment camp, right?
Pretty much, yes, ma'am.
So you were born there?
I was born there, and my parents were shipped there from California during World War II.
And how long were you there for?
About 3 years.
Is there, I know that sometimes, you know, when you look back on your life and you can be 3 years old and still kind of remember things, is there anything you remember from that time, or is it mostly just from your parents?
Well, I remember some, mainly the children didn't have anything to do, so all they did was play, no chores, and had to walk a long way to the restroom in the middle of the night, and I had to wait in line for every meal. So, and just, you know, when you're 2, 3 years old, you think everybody's growing up that way. So didn't know anything but different.
Did your parents kind of give you more details throughout your life what they had to do during that time?
They didn't talk about that much. You know, my mother just, you know, since I was a newborn, I guess that was a full-time job. But my father worked as a chef and a lumberjack and whatever that was available. I think they earned like maximum of $17 a month. So he kept that to buy us candy and whatever.
What did your parents do before then?
They were farmers out right outside of Stockton, California, and when the war broke out and they were told to leave, you know, they only had a couple of weeks to get rid of everything. So if people think about having all their possessions, especially a farm, you got the tractors and all the equipment and the people you're working with and the crops that are growing, so hey, you got to leave in 2 weeks. It was pretty traumatic, I'm sure.
And then after those 3 years that your family was there, what was next? What did you do?
Well, there was about, when the camps were closed, there were about 6 or 7 families, maybe a little more. One group, maybe 3 or 4 families, went to a farming community close to where the airport's located now. And about 5 or 6 families started farming in Scott as sharecrop farmers.
And then what did you do with yourself? You were saying that you've been in Arkansas ever since.
Well, when I was growing up, I was working on a farm, which, you know, the hardest part was picking okra from daylight to dark. But
I could see that. That teaches you some responsibility pretty quickly, I guess, as a kid.
Yeah, but other than that, just went to school and went on to the field after the school was out. I really look forward to school starting in the summertime after the summer's over.
I'm sure. And then you actually went on to serve our country?
I did. You know, the ironic thing, during World War II, you know, my mother was born in California and my father was born in Hawaii. So they were farming in California. My mother was, her parents were migrant farmers. So they sent all their kids back to Japan to go to school. And before the war started, my mother's parents moved back to Hawaii, Hiroshima, as a matter of fact, and all the kids came back to the U.S. to run their life. And going back to the military, when the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, my grandparents were living there, and my grandmother said that the draft of the bomb just blew up her skirt. Wow. And that's the only after effect she had. But I had 2 cousins that were killed by the atomic bomb blast. So 20 years later, I didn't know all this back then. 20 years later, after I got out of college, we had the draft, and Vietnam War was just starting. So I went into the Air Force wearing the same uniforms that put my parents in prison, and the same uniform of the people who bombed my grandmother and killed 2 of my cousins. So I was assigned to fly B-52s and flew 59 missions during the Vietnam War. Happy to have survived, but I was doing the same thing that people did to my grandparents.
That uniform, there's a lot of pride associated with it, but what were you feeling at that time?
Oh, yeah. That was a patriotic thing to do.
So you did feel pride?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, if I had to do it again, I would probably do it again. Things happen in life, and I lived in the U.S. My parents were citizens, but they were put in jail without charge, without trial, without any due process. But, just got to get over it and move on.
I don't know if a lot of people could say that. You're a better person than I.
Well, the people in Arkansas have been so good. Some of the best friends I got.
And people have been reaching out to you recently because the federal government is considering a site very close to the internment camp, less than 2 miles, to house some of these.
Actually, it abuts the old rural relocation camp.
Migrant children. What was your initial reaction when you had heard that site was being considered?
It was really surprising because there's a museum in McGee about World War II internment camp, and there's a museum in Los Angeles, which I'm on the board, Japanese American National Museum. That the reason for their existence is let's tell everybody this story so it will never happen again. And then this last April we had a reunion in McGee at the museum. My friend George Takei came down from California to talk, and one of the talk was we hope this never happens again. And then, 2 months later, here's one. They're going to talking about putting the camp in right next door. So, wow. And they're talking about Tent City. And, I don't know where they're from, but mosquitoes will carry people away down in Arkansas.
I've only been here for about 5 years, and I know that very well. There is bipartisan opposition, though, here in the state to housing these children here. We've heard from state lawmakers, even the governor, and then, of course, across the country, you're seeing Americans protest this Trump policy of separating children from their families. But do you kind of consume all of this with some resentment, since the only support you were hearing back then was the sound of silence?
Yeah, there were a lot of crickets back then, back in 1940s. And the same people, well, I don't want to get politics involved in it, but the same people who are complaining today, they were not around in 1940, and I haven't really got my head wrapped around this situation on the Mexican border, because I've wondered, where were these people when they were throwing my parents in jail they didn't break a law? Now, these people coming across the border illegally, they're breaking a law. I mean, we got laws, and they're breaking them. So if they get arrested, if you and I robbed a bank and we got arrested and we had children at home, we'd separate. They got to go somewhere. They're not going to jail with us. So I just wonder where all these people were when I needed their help. And now they're stepping up for people who are breaking law. And a friend in McGee was saying that in the paper he was quoted, people on death row are going to have better facilities than what these people will have living in a tent city. So
that says a lot.
Yeah, I think what we need to do is, this is a problem. No one wants their kids taken away. Even Donald Trump didn't want kids taken away. We just got to come together, quit fighting, and quit trying to get a vote, and get something done that's right for all the people.
Now that you're 74 years old,
right?
Yes. How does those 3 years when you were in that camp still affect you today?
Well, you have flashbacks of what my parents went through. All of a sudden, get 2 or 3 weeks, you got to leave everything, and what they went through. I was talking to Elizabeth Eckford with Little Rock 9. She was marching down that street, people yelling. My mother said, when they had to go to the assembly center, they had to march down the street and go to the bus to take them to the assembly center. Said people were yelling, not saying nice things, spitting. And Elizabeth had to go through that. And even when I got out of the Air Force or came back from the Vietnam War, same thing was happening. All my friends were getting yelled at, spit at, and life goes on.
I guess so. Do you see a time in our country when that would end? I guess you have to be hopeful. You seem like a very optimistic person.
You hope it would. Right now there's just too much polarization in politics, and people just need to, like Barack Obama said, that elections have consequences. Trump is our president. Let's support him and get things done and let him run the country. We have rules, let's follow them. It's just amazing how even the Supreme Court is supposed to interpret the law, and they can't even agree on it. So they're the final answer. So something needs to be done. Everybody get together and live life peacefully.
Well, hey, Richard, I think that's a great way to end. We really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your experience with us.
I appreciate you having me there.
And when we come back, we'll dig into the legal fight over medical marijuana and where the process stands more than a year and a half after Arkansans voted to legalize it. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
When disaster strikes, when duty calls, and when others are in need, they go first. Now it's time to put them first. Ford thanks those who go further for all of us. First responders, military personnel, veterans, and retirees get $1,000 appreciation cash on top of public offer from Ford, America's best-selling brand. Visit FordSalutesThoseWhoServe.com to learn more.
These crispy tenders are so flavorful and crispy. I know, right? They're so flispy. Flispy? Yeah, flavorful and crispy. It's this thing I do where I combine 2 words to make a cooler word. How neat. I also came up with Labradoodle. You had a Labrador who could draw?
Nothing beats our new crispy tenders made with 100% all-white meat and cooked to golden perfection. Try them now in our $3.99 crispy tender dinner. This is how you Sonic.
Few others on Earth can rival the strength of an ant relative to its size. Until now. The new 2018 GMC Terrain has arrived. Terrain, the powerful compact SUV from GMC. Get over $2,700 total value on a 2018 GMC Terrain Denali when you finance through GM Financial. And current non-GM owners, use your additional purchase cash to get over $5,200 total value.
You can have a beautiful new kitchen or bathroom without the stress of a typical renovation. Just call Granite Transformations in Maumelle. Our quartz counters fit permanently in place right over your old countertops. Installation only takes about 1 day, and our surfaces are made with Forever Seal, so they're more scratch and stain resistant than ordinary granite. Right now, get up to $1,000 off during our summer savings event. Call Granite Transformations for a free design consultation.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Welcome back to Capitol View. We saw new developments this week in the legal battle over medical marijuana here in the natural state. The state Supreme Court ruled the cultivation licenses can move ahead after a judge blocked them. But there's not really an indication when the product will actually be available to patients. Joining me in studio to discuss the latest developments is David Couch, the author of the Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment. David, welcome back.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for joining us again, per usual, to break everything down. So I know that you were watching the oral arguments. Since you were watching those, what was your initial reaction to their ruling? Was it something you predicted just from their line of questioning, or what have you?
Yeah, exactly. From their line of questioning at the arguments and the briefing that you read before the arguments, you knew that the issue was whether or not the court felt as if the circuit court had jurisdiction, because there had not really been a final decision by the agency, and so it was expected. That was what we expected them to rule.
Okay. And then we're kind of in this 2-week holding pattern, at least right now, because that's, I guess, when the ruling takes effect, per se.
A mandate, yeah. But you have a 2-week period where people can petition the court to rehear the matter before it becomes final. I don't anticipate anybody will do that.
Okay. What about the Department of Finance and Administration? I was talking to their spokesman earlier this week. They were saying, you know, we can't say what the 5 members of the Medical Marijuana Commission can do, but they have a couple options here. After the 2 weeks, they could immediately award the licenses, or they could go back and review them, maybe even rescore them. What are they going to do?
You know, probably what they'll do, since they've not done anything, and I felt they could have done something in the meantime, or at least indicated what they were going to do. I suspect that they probably will just go ahead and stick with the 5 that they have. You know, Justice Kemp had a concurring opinion which indicated that the Supreme Court at least has some discussions about the rules and some other potential issues that may be involved with the commission that they should look at. I don't know if they'll do that or not, but I suspect that probably what they'll do is just go ahead and award those same 5 people the licenses, issue the denial letters, and then we'll be right back in court again.
What do you think of state lawmakers kind of responding to this? I know you have like Democrat Scott Bolt saying let's start the whole thing over again, and then of course Doug House, who spearheaded the legislation, is resisting it. So, I mean, does that have much pull? I guess not a whole lot.
It should. Personally, if I was on the commission, you know, you want this industry to start off on the right foot, and there's been a lot of controversies surrounding this, and so you have 85 people that the Marijuana Commission, it thought at least were qualified to do that. If it was my decision, in order to kind of remove the smell, to speak, from the whole entire process, I think I would just put all 85 names in a hat and draw out the top 5. I was opposed to that to begin with, but you know, we're 590 days, almost 600 days into this issue now, and the most important thing is that we get the medicine to the patients that need it as soon as possible.
We'll get to some of the smell aspects in a second. But as far as the unsuccessful candidates, I know I was talking to you earlier this week. They kind of have a couple options here, like you were saying. You don't expect them to kind of do any complaining as of yet within this 2-week period, but I mean, they could still appeal to circuit court. They could still do those, letters of protest with the commission?
Sure, that's exactly what the Supreme Court said needed to be done and wasn't done in the past. So once the commission issues the licenses and issues the denials, then the people will have a chance to protest with the commission. They can either decide it or not, and then after 30 days they can appeal to circuit court.
So what do you expect? More court battles, or more of handling it within the commission?
Well, if the commission sticks to their guns and continues to go with the same track, then I expect that the litigation will continue as well, and it'll be months away before we have another decision.
Let's talk about some of the controversies then. I asked the Department of Finance and Administration to, kind of as all of this is going on, we have bribery allegations, the conflicts of interest, complaints, you know, things of that nature. DFNA is kind of separating them into 2 separate issues. They're saying, well, we have these allegations and some investigations into them on one side, and then on this other side we have the licensing process. Do you think they should be considered as one whole entity, or is that okay to say we're right here?
No, I think you have to consider them together. You can't consider them separate, because eventually somebody is going to file a protest and says this licensee should not get this because of bribery, or this licensee should not get it because of some sort of type of impropriety. Or, you know, some of the issues that were raised in circuit court was that the actual facility was too close to a school, and that the commission didn't do any kind of independent verification. So I think all those issues will be brought to the commission's attention, and they should address them.
But they're kind of having to investigate themselves, right?
Sure. But even if they don't investigate themselves, that there's such an interest in this that the people who get denied is going to investigate it for them.
That's a good point.
It's an adversarial process.
Sure. What about the dispensaries? I know that they could start the scoring process or continue it, since I know that they got a little bit of a jump on it before Griffin's ruling came down. But what do you think? I mean, the way that we saw the Supreme Court rule this way, I mean, don't you think once the 32 dispensaries are awarded that we could be right back in the same boat? Or
It is. If they continue the same path, I think we'll be back in the same boat. You know, dispensaries are a little bit different than cultivation. More of a retail outlet. They can grow 50 mature marijuana plants at a time, which could produce probably enough medicine to meet the needs of the patients that are currently registered, maybe a little bit more. So, you know, they've not done anything on that. So what they really should do, again, I'm just going to, that one is just find out if they're qualified, not qualified, put them in a hat because it's not as complicated or expensive process, and draw them out. Draw the 32 people out, and let's get going.
And then at least, like you said, the patients who are certified could at least get some from the dispensaries.
Absolutely,
Even if the cultivation facilities are still tied up.
That's true.
Okay. So let's end on another speculation then.
Right.
Here's the million-dollar question that everybody's always asked whenever this comes up. 5,400 certified patients right now. When do you think, based on this Supreme Court ruling, that we're going to see medical marijuana?
Well, you know, again, it's going to be up to the commission. If they choose the same path, then it's going to be, you know, 6 to 9 months, maybe even another year. But if they change it and address it in some other way that removes a lot of the potential controversy, then, you know, they could do it in 6 months. You might have actually product, because the dispensaries could be open, give them time to grow. Cultivation facilities are actually going to be a lot longer to get up and running and grow. But so 6 months, Christmas now, maybe.
Okay. Christmas present?
It is.
All right, for you. Well, yeah, I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see for 2 weeks, and then some of these, you know, questions could be answered. So, but thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
As always. And then stay with us. We're back to wrap it all up after this. You're watching Capitol View on Sunday morning.
No mess is too much for the boys in blue.
Uh-oh, I'm in a mess.
Even if you have a messy Maya, we can make everything look good as new. When Messy Maya strikes at your house, you know who to call.
The boys in blue.
Injured in a car wreck? Call Morris Bard. Call 376-9000.
376-9000.
We'll work hard to get you the money you deserve.
It's easy. Just call 376-9000.
Just call 376-9000.
What are you waiting for? Call now.
Injured in a car wreck in the Little Rock area? You know what to do. Call me now, 376-9000, or go to morrisbart.com. One call, that's all.
No mess is too much for the boys in blue.
Uh-oh, I'm in a mess.
Even if you have a messy Maya, we can make everything look good as new. When Messy Maya strikes at your house, you know who to call.
The boys in blue.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
And that does it for today's show. We, of course, want to know your thoughts on all of the issues we discussed during Capitol View, among the many others affecting our state. So just make sure you keep using that hashtag MyCapitolView on Twitter and Facebook, both during and after the show, so we can continue the conversation together. We're back with an all-new Capitol View next week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.